Om Katel. So if I can rightly speak and pronounce your name, Dr. Om. So he is from the University of Bhutan, and he has expertise in climate change, natural resource management, and biodiversity. He has done his master's from the University of North Bengal and PhD from Asian Institute of Technology. He is currently a fellow of Nagaon University. Thank you so much, Dr. Om. Floor is yours. So please limit your talk within 12 minutes, and then we'll go for 3 minutes questions answer.
Okay, thank you, Satya. It's always a pleasure to be a part of this kind of a forum. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Would you like to share your screen? I'll stop this.
Yeah, I will share my screen.
Wonderful.
Okay, so okay, I'll click here. Is it visible?
Yes, very much.
Okay, so thank you everybody, and good morning, good afternoon, maybe good evening, because we are at different places at this point in time. So this is a, by the way, I'm Om Katel, and I'm at the College of Natural Resources, which is one of the constituent colleges of the Royal University of Bhutan. And I'll talk about climate change and its impact relatively on natural resources. That is basically looking at the forests. And I purposely, I did not keep it very specific. I kept it a little bit broad and open. So I'll be just jumping abruptly from climate change to natural resources, and then back and forth now and then. So just to start with, my college actually is a college of natural resources, which deals with agriculture, forestry, animal science, sustainable development, and also environment and climate studies. So we do research something like this, climate change and how climate change is affecting agriculture, animal science, also forestry. Lately, we have been doing this research on, I should say this, basically, the forest is the most important component for Bhutan as a country. I'll talk about forestry in a minute. But as a college also, in the university, we started doing this research on impact of climate change and forests. Why? Because Bhutan is, if you could see this, the pink dot, it's a landlocked country, and it is the sandwich country, so to say, in between India and China. And then you can see that the India surrounds Bhutan. Bhutan shares its border with India in east, west, and the south. And then the northern side, the Bhutan shares border with China. And then since the altitudinal variation, that is, if you go from south to the north, south it is about 80 meters above the sea level, and then 7,500 meters above the sea level in the north, in the range of 150 kilometers, which is very much, the terrain, and it has a high variation of temperature and elevation gradient. That is why it depends where you are, because the precipitation, temperature, the weather conditions differ significantly from place to place. So somebody, was asking me in one of the conferences, what is the average temperature in Bhutan? It is very hard to say average temperature, because in the south it is 25 to 30 degrees, and then in the north it is minus 15, minus 30, sometimes it's even minus 40 degrees Celsius in the northern border. So as you see in this slide, the rainfall patterns differs, and in the middle of Bhutan sometimes it remains dry, which is called the intermontane basin, and then that actually creates a very interesting microclimatic conditions and affects the local livelihoods, affects biodiversity, affects the wildlife movement and things like that. we have this projection of the temperature and precipitation. I didn't put it there, but based on that, if you just look at the red portions in the southern region, this is average of 25 to 30 degrees, and in the northern it is about 15 degrees, minus 15 degrees Celsius. So these next 40 years, we see that in the projections, these red patches are increasing significantly. And in the next slide, I show that we did this research looking at the data we have, and then looking at global climate models, and then we figure out that there is already increase of temperature up to 0.8 degrees Celsius in the last 100 years. And that's going to have significant impact to Bhutan and beyond. So if you just look at this, I don't know how to put this one, okay. Yeah, so if you look at this slide, since 1910 and then 1960 and then since 1990, so we looked at this temperature, and then we see that in Bhutan, it is the maximum increase in temperature. So at least in the South Asian region, taking this China, India, Myanmar, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, the average temperature increase since 1990 is 2.8 degrees Celsius. So that is quite significant. There are so many implications when we talk about the climate change, increasing temperature, the precipitation changes, and then the change in precipitation would affect the agriculture, affect the forestry, and then most important thing, affects the glaciers. And most of the rivers in Bhutan, these are fed by glaciers, and then these rivers flow from India to, Bhutan to India, and then to Bangladesh. So there is anything happens with the glaciers in the northern part of Bhutan affects Bhutan, and then in turn affects India, and then goes down to Bangladesh. So there is a series of repercussions. And then we see that this region, the Himalayan region, at least in the Eastern Himalaya, it has one of the highest population densities, and anything to do with water resources is going to have a significant impact on this region. So in terms of Bhutan, if you just look at, there are three things. One is, of course, fragile mountainous ecosystems that I already talked about, and then water resources, agriculture, and then forest. These are the three main sources, economic sources for Bhutan. So climate change will have impact on all of these sources, because these are climate sensitive sectors. So what is the emission status in Bhutan? If you just look at you can look at these different graphs of agriculture, industrial processes, wastes, energy used in the industry. But you can look at this first sentence that total emissions in Bhutan is 1.6 million tons, and the forest removals, the carbon dioxide removals, which means the forests that is sequestering carbon is more than 6,000 million tons of carbon. So there is some scope still to go for development, but at the same time, how much and how little, what can we do? These are some of the issues that people ask. Since until 2009, this is the space that we have the carbon budget, which means sometimes people like to call Bhutan as the carbon negative country, but government actually put it as let us remain as a carbon neutral country, not the negative country, because we also need some space for development. So when we talk about the carbon emissions, then it relates back to the 1960s, when all the conservation policies regarding the forests came into being in Bhutan. So started with the Forest Conservation Act, establishment of Department of Forestry. That was the first office in Bhutan in 1952. It's not that old, of course, relatively compared to other countries, but this is the oldest the forests, the related organization in Bhutan. And then there are a series of the conservation policies, acts, rules, regulations, and it came up. And in 2008, the constitution was enacted. And it is the same year that democracy in Bhutan was also introduced. And what I'm trying to say with this slide is that for any kind of development related issues, if it has to do a little bit more than the districts, more than the region, more than the country, because I believe that climate change is a global problem. It is not really a local problem. Of course, when you talk about impacts, it affects at the local level. That is why sometimes people say that Bhutan is not contributing anything to climate change, but it is actually bearing the brunt of climate change. So there has to be some kind of cooperation, some kind of linkages with the international community. So collectively, what we can do to address the impact of climate change. But at the national level, having said that, at the national level, there has to be some kind of policies. We should be actually providing basis to address the impact. So we have this constitution. What it says it is a trustee, and then they need to take care of their natural resources. And most important article in the constitution is that minimum of 60% of Bhutan's total land shall be maintained under forest cover for all times to come. So this is quite interesting, and this started in 1974, and then since then the commercial logging in Bhutan was significantly reduced, and also the shifting cultivation in Bhutan was reduced. And then after that, it was realized that the forest actually provides a lot of services, and then it is much more beneficial for the local communities. Rather than having a commercial logging, having forest actually can benefit more to the local communities. So that's what the government has realized. And then government has come up with this development philosophy known as gross national happiness. And then it has this, you can see this 4 pillars. And in these 4 pillars, you can see that 2 pillars are actually the conservation of the natural environment. And then another one is preservation and promotion of cultural values, which means people also believe that need to have a sacred groves, sacred forests, and then the mountains and then big trees are also, they are believed as the manifestations of the deities, which are the protectors. So it also serves as kind of basis to protect the forests. So based on this, government is actually encouraging local communities and then also the policymakers to look into the community values and then the ecosystem services that comes from the forest, but not really looking into only to the monetary values of the forest. So how do Bhutan then implements? These are the means of implementation, and there is a strong how should I say this? Strong kind of the support from different organizations, and then considering this forest as a carbon sink, and then there are different activities which actually leads to looking at the national forest inventory, which looks into whether forest is changing, whether forest is actually being productive, and then the reducing emissions for deforestation, forest degradation with sustainable and conservation activities. Another one is focusing on low emission development, because if you just look at this development philosophy, promotion of equitable and sustainable socio-economic development, that also talks about pursuing low emission development in Bhutan. So another thing is there are a number of, starting from the constitutions, there are a number of organizations which actually have this agendas, and then they put in their the actions how to address climate change. And then Bhutan also have this kind of climate change activities, put it into this national 5-year plans. Right now, Bhutan is having the 12th 5-year plan, which started in 2018 and then ends by 2023. And then there are a number of significant number of activities which is actually kept to address the issues of climate change impacts in Bhutan. So, and government also asks about, from local level, asking local people what is the difficulties and how can you actually contribute to reducing climate change impacts. Things like that, starting from the local level, brings to the national level, and then based on that, policies are designed. And these are some of the priority adaptation needs to address impact of climate change in Bhutan. So there are 10 actually. So if you just look at starting from water security, climate resilient agriculture, ecosystem services, resilient against climate hazards, climate health risks, climate proof transport infrastructure, then resilient livestock farming, enhanced climate information services, then similarly diversified energy generation, resilient urban and rural settlements. So we also looked at now how does this different national key areas is actually linking with the SDGs. So we found that there are quite a number of about 12 SDG goals which are actually can be directly linked to these national key areas which government has included in their 5-year plans. So of course, here I would like to say that in view of the COVID, actually somehow I do not know in this 5-year plan how much of the actions that are kept for addressing climate change impact can be continued and can be achieved because in view of the COVID, many of the activities that has to be overhauled. So that's what the finance minister was recently saying. But we are very much hopeful that the serious issues related to the climate change impact would not be left out. So these we are very much hopeful, but we do not know at the moment. It's our guess actually. So just to conclude, it's not only Bhutan that is affecting climate change. When you talk about climate change in Bhutan, it is way beyond Bhutan. It affects Assam, and then goes in India, then goes to the Bangladesh, and where there is the largest concentration of people from Bhutan. If you cross the border from Bhutan and then go to the Assam, and then along the river basin, they call GBM, Ganga, Brahmaputra, Meghna river basin. In these river basins, there are the largest concentration of people. So another thing is, in order to address transboundary cooperation on data collection and standard, sharing of data, how to share the data, and then making use of this valuable data should be made available. And then when you talk about climate change, it is not only good to talk about climate change, increasing temperature, increasing precipitation, increasing water resources, decreasing water resources, but we need to look at river basin level. So that would actually take care of many other issues related to climate change and also related to poverty. So we not only address the issues of climate change, but also can address the issues of poverty side by side. So it is a win-win situation. So to achieve this sustainable development goals, how can we do it? Both country and community level commitment and action should be there because, for example, like Bhutan is doing significant work on addressing climate change, but many other big countries, especially the industrialized countries, are not doing enough to address the impact of climate change. So if countries come together and then at their level, if a small contribution is made, probably the SDGs targets can be met. So we do not need to have a big project at one time or whatever, but individual level, community level, and then the country level, if small actions are actually undertaken, definitely this can be achieved in a short period of time. So I'd like to end here by saying this: climate change knows no borders. It will not stop until each of us shoulder a responsibility to bring sustainable development in our own community.